Well, hey, North Park Community Church. Pastor Luke here with another episode of First Looks. And we are pressing on in our series through Matthew. We're beginning chapter 6. So we're about the midway point of the Sermon on the Mount. And we're going to be looking at verses 1 through 18. And then we're going to subtract verses 9 through 15. Because this right here is the Lord's Prayer. And that will be the passage for next week. Luke Kiergaard is going to preach, and he's gonna take the Lord's Prayer on its own. And so I'm taking this opportunity here to supply the context for it, what's coming before and what's coming after the prayer, to help situate it rightly within Jesus's overall message. And what we have going on in these verses is a pretty unique or maybe it's better to say a unique way of approaching what Jesus says here is to just remember the context of all that we've been saying so far. We're gonna actually take a moment in just a bit here and kind of compare what Jesus has said with what he's saying here, and we'll start to see kind of how he's mapping two equal opposite errors, kind of side by side to drill down a main point for us. So with that, let's just go ahead and what I'm going to start with here is I'm just going to kind of take a little bit of a different approach here, and we're just going to kind of look at the units that we have here, units of thought, and some repeated phraseology that kind of is the key for us to unlock Jesus's main point. So I'm going to kind of just break it up, and then we'll go from there. I'll make some comments along the way. So first, we're gonna take what is the thesis of this whole part right here, and that's in the first verse. Okay, so this is the thesis of the section. Beware practicing your righteousness. It's going to be a key word there. Before other people, in order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Okay, let me grab that. No reward from your Father who is in heaven. One other thing I want to highlight here. So this is, let me change my color here to distinguish it. So this is practicing righteousness, for this right here, to be seen. And so this keys us in right away. This is an issue of heart motivation. That's the main point right there. Heart motivation in practicing your righteousness. Okay. Now, we have a couple units of how should we say, a couple different ways in which Jesus will talk about how you can practice your righteousness in order to be seen by others. And so he hits three of the most prevalent acts of righteousness or acts of religious observance that would have been found in first century Judaism. The first one that we'll have is in almsgiving. with the almsgiving, it was the money that you would give to those who were poor and needy, and that was viewed as act of mercy. This is in the Old Testament instruction from God. The almsgiving was actually an act of mercy to a person, but to God as well, is what it was intended to be, as an act of worship to God. And then we move into Unit 2 down here, and it's on prayer. And we'll look at that, and then Jesus will say, and this is the part that we're going to leave for next week. I'll go ahead and just kind of demarcate it here. The Lord's Prayer, famous. And so this is Jesus' example of prayer, a little of excursus, so to speak, here. And then we get down to the last act of righteousness, which was found in fasting, right there. Now let's go back up through it here, and let's look at some of the repeated phrasing that we see here that's going to clue us into some stuff. So when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and the streets, and may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. When they give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be done in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Okay? So, point is acts done for the praise of others. Their praise is your reward. However, when you do it unto the Lord in secret, then he will be the one who will reward you. And Jesus is kind of putting it out there of who would you prefer to be rewarded by? And then he's going to get into prayer. When you pray, don't pray like the hypocrites. Let me start to we have the hypocrites. And is that the only one in that section? Okay, when you pray, you must not pray like the hypocrites, for they love to stand in the synagogues and street corners to be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. When you pray, go to your room, shut the door, that your Father who is in secret, and your Father who is in secret will reward you. When you pray, don't heap up empty phrases like Gentiles do. They think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. There's another kind of just something I want to pick up on here. Be praised by others. May be seen by others. Okay. And then here we come down to the last section after the excursus of the Lord's Prayer. And we have hypocrites. When you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be, there it is, seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they've received their reward. When you fast, anoint your head, wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but your Father who is in secret, and your Father who is in secret will reward you. Your Father who is in secret, who sees in secret, will reward you. So, what I'm trying to highlight here by running through this pretty quickly is that we see that there's a common repetition here of formula is kind of how it's referred to, a formula Jesus has for making his argumentation. And in all of this, he's taking a different, you just widely understood and accepted spiritual practices of righteousness, things that God commands his people to be doing. And Jesus is talking about how the way in which you go about it will ultimately reveal your motivation and the condition of your heart. And he's going to go ahead and show how when you do things unto the Lord and for the Lord's sake, and for an audience of one, so to speak, that you'll find reward in that. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to take this same passage that we're looking at briefly here, and I want to go to what we've seen earlier in chapter 5. On the right-hand column here that I'm moving, you'll see that's chapter 5. Then over here on the left-hand side, we got chapter 6. We got them paired together here. So let me go back to chapter 5 here and just show you some things here. So salt and light, right after the Beatitudes, which we would kind of call the Beatitudes the introduction to the sermon, and then getting into verse 13 is really when you're going to start to get into the body of the message. And Jesus says, you're the salt of the earth, you're the light of the world. And then he says, a city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Don't light a lamp and put it under a basket. And then he says, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works. Okay, see your good works, grab onto that, and give glory. I'm pulling this word up right here, doxasosin, from the root doxazo, there, which means to praise or to glorify. So maybe you've heard of a doxology, which is doxa is the word for glory, and so doxazo here is the giving glory or the praising. So the doxology is praising God. And so here in verse 5:16, Jesus is saying, let men see your good works, the way you live your life, the manner of your life, and may it result with giving praise, giving glory to your Father who is in heaven. Now, look over here on the left-hand column, chapter 6. Beware practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. So that's a really key part there, because in chapter 5 it says people should see your good works, but to give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Jesus is getting after here in chapter 6 when we do good works in order to be seen by other people, not for the glory of God, but as we'll see in just a moment here, for our own glory. And so in verse 2 it says, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others, is what the ESV says. Let's pull up the word. Doxazo, same root. And so what we have as translated in the ESV as praised in 6:2 is the same word used by Jesus in 5:16 of give glory to your Father who is in heaven. And that's what this whole thing is circulating around. The whole argument in 6 is when we are doing good works to be seen by others so that we may be the recipients of praise, when we have been designed and called and we exist so that God, our God in heaven, would receive the glory. And so this is the robbing God of his glory when we do certain acts of righteousness for our own gain, for our own sake. Now, going a little bit further, Jesus gives us how he came to fulfill the law, because he's going to give us those 6 case studies of anger and lust, divorce, oaths, retaliation, and loving your enemies. And so in all 6 of those case studies is what we've called them, that there's been the same formula. right? You have heard it said, and Jesus looking back to the law that you shall not murder, but Jesus does what? He works it into the heart. He gets to the heart of the matter, and he says, no, it's not just if you haven't murdered anybody; it's if you've harbored anger within your heart, and then. Jesus goes on to say that what you allow to be harbored in your heart is seen and known by God, and it is judged by God with an equal judgment as if you actually murdered somebody. And so we see that our Father who is in secret sees in secret the condition of your heart when you're harboring anger or lust or oath breaking or whatever it may be. Now, come back over to chapter 6 on the left side here. What do we have? We have the same, very, very similar formula, where Jesus is on the right hand in chapter 5. He's talking about sin and how sin is a condition of the heart. Over here on the left-hand side, he's saying that your righteousness is a condition of the heart. And so when your external actions are really being born out of a sinful, misplaced, wrongly motivated heart, your Father's in secret, and if you're doing it for worldly praise, for the praise of others, to receive glory from those who see your righteousness, then you know what? That's your reward right there. And you'll miss out on the reward of doing it for the glory of God, in the presence of God, for the visibility of God, and it's really important. It's really important to grab that. Because it shows us the unity of this Sermon on the Mount, and how Jesus is by taking these two approaches, one towards focusing on when we sin, the other one focusing on the heart condition of when we do righteousness, quote unquote. He's hitting the two ways that we tend to err. When our hearts are not ordered rightly, when the loves of our heart are not ordered rightly, and so we see this transcending ethic that rises to the surface from grabbing this context of 5 and 6 together in unison. Now, going back to our text here, just a couple other notes that I'd want to make is this. There's let me get this here. There's certain questions that come about that we'll need to address. And so one of the primary questions is, should I only give anonymously? Should I only give anonymously? Is it ever okay to sign my name at the, on an encouragement card along with a check? And we're going to have to answer that, because that's very much, it seems like, what the surface is. However, Jesus is using the same hyperbolic style that he used at the end of chapter 5 as well, where he says, pluck out your right eye and cut off your right hand and things like that if it's causing you to sin. Hey, before you offer your offering down in Jerusalem, go ahead and just sprint back up to Galilee real quick, make things right with your the guy you've had offense with, and then run back real quick. And so Jesus was using hyperbolic scenarios to drive the point home to us, and he's doing the same thing here. And so not letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that's metaphorical hyperbole there. And so we need to address that. But then we have to ask the question, what does it look like for us to receive and respond to the ethic that Jesus is giving us? And it's going to be the same thing here with prayer. The question we'll have is, should we pray in public together? Seems like Jesus is saying no to that when you do that, your heart is just going to be trying to pray in King James prayer so that people think you're extra holy, and it's not good for your heart. So when you pray, just pray on your own, pray in secret, pray in your prayer closet. And that's how you should pray. And so we need to address that and understand what Jesus is saying in its context, and then take that and understand it within the entirety of the biblical instruction. And we have the same thing here with fasting. And should we? I don't know. This is honestly, I think the one like that we have right here is this is the question I think is probably more appropriate for us, because Jesus saying anoint your heads, wash your face, and put on a little mascara, a little blush, whatever, so that you look great. Don't make yourself look all droopy and dumpy when you're fasting, so that people say, oh, you look terrible today. So, oh yeah, I'm just fasting today because I'm so holy. I don't know that that's really the question that we have today, but I think maybe the question that we have is for us in our particular context, where most people I've engaged with have not ever or do not regularly practice a fast. And so maybe the question is, how do we talk about and grow together in the biblical practice of fasting while safeguarding our heart motives? I think that might be the more pressing question for us in America, so that say, hey, we're gonna practice a fast on whatever, December 1st, and we want everybody to participate in it, and we want to talk about it corporately, and do you have people who are gonna maybe fake it to try to not feel excluded? Do we have other people who maybe feel guilty because they're not willing or able to participate in it? Do we have other people who are maybe pressing into it a little too much to maybe just draw attention to themselves? And how do we, I think the question for us on this one is, how do we recover the right practice of fasting collectively, corporately together in the way that we teach and practice it, without falling prey to the deceitful heart's desire to acquire glory for ourselves and attention for ourselves? So I think that's probably the more pressing question. So that's it. That's what we got. That's what we're going to be preaching on. I think this is going to be really helpful for us. I think there's some instructive points from us, some good questions here that I think will help to guide our hearts and our lives to maybe be just freshly resolved, to make sure that the things that we're doing are not for our own personal namesake, not for the namesake of North Park Community Church, but the things that we do are ultimately for the glory of God. May the way that we live our lives, in the way that we take our sin seriously, chapter 5, and in the way that we practice our righteousness purely, may all of it be so that men would give glory not to us, but to our God and Father in heaven. So there we have it. Please be praying for me as I try to craft this and mold this into just the right sermon for us. I'm just really so needful of your prayers, and I'm just so grateful that I know so many of you are praying for me. And so I love you, church, and I'll see you Sunday.